Hello, welcome. Amanda here with Crafting with Amanda, and this is going to be part 2 of the Sweetest Honey card making workshop. Last week on Friday, there's a video, and I'll post a link for you in the description and up here if you want to click on it, that I did walk through the cuts for all the cards, and then I walked through the assembly of card number 1. You make 4 cards of 4 different designs, and what I do is for the first card of a design, I make it just as the workshop tells us, and then for the second occurrence of that design, like for card number 1, the first one is as the workshop. Card number 2, or the B card in that same design, is just slightly modified. And then cards 3 and 4 are more modified, and I've augmented them either by adding a flower or some sort of different embellishment that's not included with the kit, just to give you some ideas of how you can make these cards your own. So what you're seeing here now is I'm preparing card number 2 for assembly. And in the workshop guides, it instructs you to take the sentiment piece and to sponge through a stencil basically that you've made from one of the die cuts of the honeycomb, and you stencil through that with rosemary, and then you stamp with black ink happy birthday and queen bee, and then there's a little tiny crown, I don't know if you can see it on the video, that you stamp over top of the Q of queen bee, and you do that in the Sundance color. So I am just following their instructions and setting up the sentiment piece. I have also stamped the bees for not only this card but the other cards in this set as well. And now I'm going to assemble the card front. So you attach this piece, they call it 2A, but it's just the black and gray honeycomb, and then lay down next to it the zip strip from your set of pieces parts for card 2, project 2 they call it. And then they do the rosemary cardstock dark side up. I did it the same way. Again, you can choose how you want to do that. Next, there's a stamp of, I guess I don't know what it's called. Oh, they call it old print border. So there's a little stamp from the kit that has like these little graphic, it's not really letters, but it's an old print border that you do underneath your layers of paper. And now I'm going to cut a dovetailed end into the banner for this card, and you can see here that just the bee goes on top, the happy queen bee. You tuck some of the Sundance honeycomb die cut pieces onto the bottom of that banner as well, and then we'll end up stamping the beehive in the lower corner of this card. So it comes together pretty quickly once you've done your prep of the different components, and if you have all of your pieces ready to go and you know which one is A, B, and C. So I hope that made sense. And I pop dot my bee so that the center, the body of the bee is down and the wings are up. You can just make it a pop dotted bee if you want, so that it's all one layer. Again, these are your cards. So then just glue all of your components together. Now I'm pulling the beehive off, and they have it right down at the bottom edge of the card, and I think it's so that it has a landing place, but I don't know, I think I would break, in hindsight, I think I would break the rules of design and just go ahead and center it in the space on the card. But you can decide how you want to do that. And then there's 3 little bees that are in a tiny little stamp that you ink up in the Sundance ink and put those, include those in the bees that are hovering around the hive. You're going to add 2 of the white pop dots to your card, and then it's done. So now iteration 2, I keep it similar in design to what the workshop says, but I just add a few different techniques or a different spin on it, but I don't think I add any other components, so you can make this card with everything that comes in the workshop. So instead of stamping the beehive on the card base, I'm going to stamp it on the sentiment piece and do the happy birthday queen bee over top of it. I'm adding more of the bees And I still do the crown on the Q for Queen Bee because I just think that's super cute. But one of the things that I do add is I edge all the inks of the paper in the rosemary ink. And I forgot that I wanted to leave a small gap because I oriented this card, instead of being a top fold, it's a side fold, as you can see. And so I'm now gluing all the strips of paper on, the black honeycomb piece with the zip strip followed by the rosemary cardstock. I'm still doing the banner end just like they did in the workshop. And you'll see that I need to add ink to the inside of that banner because it wasn't done. I didn't cut it into a banner shape until after I'd inked the edges. Or oh yep, see, I am gonna go back and do that. I recommend that you ink it before you put glue on it. You know, there's a pro tip for you. So that's all inked, and then again I'm gonna sneak the honeycomb piece up underneath, and because I forgot to allow room for that, you can see I had to trim off the honeycomb so that it will sneak underneath without me having to rip off that sentiment piece. Again, I'm going to use pop dots to put my bee on here. This video is rather long, but I walk through or show you the assembly or my process for creating at least 3 of the cards from each design. I think on some of them I don't show you the 4th card until the reveal, is because it's the same as the 3rd iteration. So then instead of that beehive being down there, I just sponged through the honeycomb to give it that background, added a pop dot bee, excuse me, and then the dots in white along the edge. And you will get to see these as a group at the end of this segment. So I was thinking that I wanted to try the bees on the top instead of the black and gray honeycomb. So I'm just dry fitting the pieces just to see what I like. I cut these flowers using the layered flower thin cut that's from our core catalog, and then you fold it not in half, you fold 3 petals to the on top of the 4 petals, and it makes this cone flower. And I had originally intended to have the cone flower with the orange Sundance pattern, but I accidentally got the striped paper instead. And you can just use scraps of your Sundance cardstock with a circle punch to make the cone of this cone flower. I happen to have done another scrapbook layout project, and so I had scraps of the pattern paper on my desk to use. So here, instead of using a sentiment square on top of the banner, I'm just using the banner piece, and I'm orienting everything off to the right side of it because I intend to put the flower overlapping on that banner, and I didn't want to hide the words or the beehive. So again, I'm going to ink all my edges just like I did with card number 2 in this set. And doing things like that, just it adds so much. I am doing it in the Sundance color rather than the gray, so it's a softer tone instead of the dark or harsher lines of the gray, but I think both really work. And I'm changing the order of these paper pieces, so you can see here how I'm kind of going to put the flower right to the edge of the banner. For me, I cut my banners, as you can see, a slit up the middle, and then from the corners up to that center slit, and everybody does it differently. When you curve these flowers, I just caution you to be careful to not pull too hard. There were a couple times that I actually kind of ripped one of the petals from the flower and curving them, and it was fine. I was able to glue it back together, but the more cautious you are going into it, the easier that's going to be. And then I'm adding a piece of honeycomb. I had done some shadowing of the honeycomb through the stencil in the bottom left corner, and all that's left to do is to add the pop dots, and for project 2, card number 3 is done. So here's the cards again. I changed some of the orientations and I added those flowers, so you can see those here. And on one of the flowers I inked the edges with the Sundance, so it really gives it a different feel than this flower that's not, the edges aren't inked. So now we're going to go into project number 3. For project number 3, they again ask you to pounce your ink through using a sponge or a brush of one of the die cuts of the honeycomb set. And if you missed it in the first video, I actually put some of the green lidded Tombow glue on the back of this particular die cut so that it would have kind of a removable stickiness to it. And I found that less is more. That's why I'm turning this page over to redo it on the back side. When I over inked or I sponged a lot so that I could see it while the die was there, it ended up being too harsh for me. So for me, less is more. And I'm stamping some of these swirls that kind of give the illusion that the bee is in flight. And then I used a masking technique so that I could make that a double loop for the bee. So their original just has it like I did the second one, with one loop at the bottom and one loop at the top of the sentiment. But I'm kind of streamlining some of the assembly because I know that I'm going to do one card as the instructions and then the second card just slightly modified. So I might as well have some of those already in place. And this is the 3 little bees that I'm stamping on some of those honeycomb cutouts. And you tear the edge of the Sundance cardstock after you have done kind of a tone on tone of this lettering. It's kind of a paragraph of words, and you do that with the Sundance ink, so it's a tone on tone here. And I don't see the lines when I stamp, and it's going to be kind of ripped and torn and covered over. So you can do everything that you wanted. And I wanted to dry fit to see how much of that paper I really could pull off, like how much extra there was going to be. If you're unfamiliar with white cork cardstock, when you tear it pulling towards you, you reveal a white edge on your project. So that's exactly what I did here. And now I realized that I cut both the sentiment, or not the sentiment, I believe I cut the mat for the sentiment just a little bit wrong. So I'm just trimming it down so that it acts as a frame around the sentiment. And then you attach your honeycomb die cut pieces, one in white and one in the rosemary color. And then you use some of those honeycomb pieces that you stamped the bees on and fill in sections of the honeycomb, which I really like. I did another project and I wish that I had filled in the sections of the honeycomb on that because I really like how that looks. So now I'm just going to attach my bees as instructed in the workshop, add my 2 black dots here under the sentiment, and this card is ready to go. So then my kind of iteration or change on this card is kind of subtle. It's not a big dramatic, oh, she did something different. These cards are great as they are, but I will ink the edges of the papers, and then I did run that Sundance color through an embossed folder instead of stamping it with the words. So those are the first 2 cards, and then this is card number 3 for project number 3. And again, I'm going to fold that flower just like I did on the project prior, with 3 petals going to the front and 4 petals being in the background. And you can see the strip of paper that I have left from my previous project, like my scraps that are just hanging around on my desk. And while we finish watching how I assemble this card, and again I'll go ahead and curve the petals up just as I did with the previous card. I'm very excited that Kim Ferguson, a YouTube creator who I met through YouTube, and she's also close to my heart maker, is coming to my house next week. We were concerned about COVID and all of that, and she's been self-isolating and we've been self-isolating, and her husband actually had an exposure, but they got tested, so they are packing their bags today to arrive on Tuesday. We're very excited about that. So you will be watching this video at the end of her visit. I'm very excited. So I took the happy birthday, and instead of putting it on the sentiment square, I'm going ahead and stamping it with black on the rosemary 1/2-inch strip of paper that comes with this project. And again, I'm going to ink through one of the die cuts to give that background of the honeycomb. I will remind you that less is more. At least that's what I liked. And I ink all the edges of the flower, which give it a totally different look. It's one of those things that you can go either way with it. It can be a stark white cone flower, or in this case, by inking the edges, I really think it just warms it up. And there you can see that I am inking all the edges. I'm going to tear that embossed cardstock now. You can kind of see the images of the flower in the light. And I really encourage you to just have fun with these cards and make them your own. And if you like how the workshop has them, by all means, you know, do them all that way, and you'll have great cards to send out and make people smile when they received them. I just thought if I gave you some options for making them a little bit different, then you could have some choices here. Choices in life are good, right? Let's see what else. Oh, so while Kim is down here, we're going to get to go to Disneyland and to California Adventure. We're very much looking forward to that. We have our KN95 masks, and we will have our social distancing and really be careful, and hopefully just have a really amazing time and get to know each other even better. Zoom allows you to get to know people, but in person is just that next step. Popped out in my bees, gonna add those to the cards. I really like how this card turned out. I debated about cutting a banner end because it was very much like Project 2, but it just seems to work with this set, and why not? A good idea is a good idea. So now we're gonna go, oh, I have to apologize, I forgot to give a shot of all 4 of the cards from Project 3, but I will have photos available on my blog so you can see all of those cards together, and that link will be in the description. And now we are on to Project 4, and this is different because you rip the edge and then you leave a gap and attach the rosemary piece, and then you ink these. It kind of looks like a chain, like there's 2 links of chain together, and so then you link those, you stamp those in the Sundance ink side by side onto that piece of Sundance cardstock. And then you also do the outline of the ticket with the, just like honey, kindness, oh, kind words are like honey to the soul. That's what the sentiment says. And then I'm trying to decide how I want to attach this die cut, because I think I cut it upside down as far as light side, dark side to what the workshop did. So it's going to go on there nicely. And also my paper moved when I was die cutting, so you can see that a little bit of the honeycomb got cut off, and I want to camouflage that and still use the rest of the die cut. And you add a bee kind of tucked under that tag, and we're going to pop the tag off with some foam tape. So if you go to make these cards, you will need some foam tape in addition to a regular glue for attaching paper. I tried to speed these up but not have them too fast so that you couldn't at least see what was happening. And do keep in mind that my voice will be distorted whether you speed up the video playback or slow down the video playback, but YouTube does allow you to do just that, of speed up or slow down, so you can kind of catch up on things. And there's also always the pause button if you want to kind of craft along with. And I forgot to not glue that Sundance cardstock down all the way, so I'm having to kind of use my thumbnail and open up a little bit of a edge so it can tuck underneath there nicely. And then I'll just go back and fill in with some of the pieces that fell out of the different die cuts that we made. And the workshop does say to use different colors and also the 2 different sides of the rosemary cardstock. And then I think in hindsight, when I make this card the second time, I stamp the beehive before I attach the honeycomb dies, and that just works out better for me. But all in all, this second iteration is very similar to what they did with the first card. So I'm going to ink the chains again, and it's the same process. As we're watching this video, I'll take this time to say thank you to all of those people that watch my channel on a regular basis. Even if you're not subscribed to my channel, but you watch, I really appreciate that. I'm relatively new to the YouTube community, and so I don't have all of the watch hours that, you know, some of the mega people have, and I just hit 750 subscribers this week, so I'm very excited about that. So thank you to those subscribers. And if you find a YouTube creator that you like, that you want to support, you can do that for free just by liking their videos. You can also share the videos with friends and family, but you can just like their videos, and even that simple like lets YouTube know that this is content that other people might be interested in. If you leave a comment or ask a question, then that helps us engage together, and I get to know you guys more. I really look forward to reading all the comments that are on my videos. I appreciate them. I've been very lucky in that I have not had any real negative comments, so I'm still flying under the radar, I guess. I've heard too many horror stories of people of getting very mean and nasty comments. I think the paper crafting community is a little softer than some of the others, let's say. So here I'm going to shake things up again for my third iteration of Project 4, and I'm going to make this a side fold card. But once again, you will see this wonderful layered flower thin cut being employed, and I do ink the edges of the petal, because once I realized I could do that, it was just a no-brainer from then on out. I really liked how that richness warmed up these cards. It was just, you know, kind of like on a sunshine and bee and a flower. It was just that warmth feeling, and I absolutely loved it. And here I went ahead and shaped the leaves of the petal, or the petals of the flower, before I attached the cone part underneath. And I found that it was more difficult to do. I thought it would be easier, but it was actually, for me, it was more difficult. But everybody works differently, so don't be afraid to try to work differently and see if that is better for you. So now that I've dry fit all of this and I like kind of the direction that the card is going in, we can finally glue it all down. And like I said, I will have a link to my blog post that will have all of these cards on it, so that if you need to see the cards kind of stopped and up close, that they will be available for you. And my blog is at craftingwithamanda.com, and then you just select blog and it will take you to the latest post. But if you go to the description underneath this video, I will have a link directly to this blog post, so you don't have to worry about finding the blog if you're watching this a year from now, because who knows when you're going to watch this. And this time I didn't pop up both wings of the bee. I just popped up the left wing because the ticket is already popped up, and so it's being held by the ticket, and then the left wing just needed some foam tape under it so that it wasn't going to get crushed. And here is the last iteration of this card, and I'm just adding the pop dots on it. And I do give you the up close of all 4 of these. So if you haven't subscribed, here's an opportunity for you to do that. Here's another video you may be interested in. And if you missed part 1 of this Sweet as Honey card workshop, the link is also in the description. Blessings!